The first step in painting is to spray the base coat. Here you can see that I have already completed that. I used about half a bottle of Rust-Oleum Satin Nutmeg spray paint. This is an enamel paint and primer all in one. It makes our job much easier that we can just use a spray can. I sprayed on about 4 light coats, letting them fully dry in between. If you spray your coats too heavy, you'll get globs of paint. Here is the strategy that I used to paint this set. I started with the base coat, and then I added 2 washes of burnt umber, followed by a single wash of black acrylic paint. Then I used my airbrush for some Tamiya Desert Yellow, 2 coats, and then 1 coat of Tamiya Buff, but only on the floor. And I'll follow all this up with a final coat of Rust-Oleum Matte Clear, just to seal everything in and protect our paint job. And here's a map of how we broke down the base coat, the nutmeg spray paint, by adding in some variation in the brown tones. Now it's time for the first wash. We will use washes to break down the monotonous base coat by adding a sense of depth and tonal variation. Complete details on how to create and apply a wash can be found in my video linked here. The first wash will be burnt umber. So I've already created the wash. We'll use a number 10 flat brush, stir it up, and because it's a wash, we just paint it on. So we'll put it on all the surfaces. We're going to put it on both the walls and the floor all at the same time. When we're finished with one section, I'll use a damp shop towel to clean the wash off all the surfaces where I don't want it. So on all the edges, because I don't want any of the wash dripping onto these edges. So that's the procedure, and I'll just go and finish up the rest of the model. At this point, I've completed 2 burnt umber washes, and now I'm going to put on the black wash. The black wash is always really cool because it makes a big difference. So I just, the same way, mix up a nice black wash and paint it on. Again, cleaning it up with a wet shop towel, because this one will really show. Again, we'll just do one section at a time. Clean it up when we're finished. And we'll just make sure there's not too much pooling in the corners. With all the washes completed and dry, it's time to go outside in my garage and airbrush my main coat. I'm going to overlay the whole thing with 2 coats of Tamiya XF59 Desert Yellow. First, I use green painter's tape to mark off the areas that I don't want to paint. After the desert yellow has dried, I will airbrush a final coat of Tamiya XF57 Buff on only the floors, just to lighten them up and make them stand out from the walls. If you want more details on how I use my airbrush, here's a link to a video clip. With all the airbrushing, the detail on my stairs is starting to disappear. So what I'm going to do is very carefully put my black wash back on. So I'm taking most of it off the brush because I don't want it to run anywhere other than. So see, I'm going to paint very carefully on the stairs, and this will bring out that detail again because it will go into the recesses. I'm just making sure that it's not going over the edges. I don't want any streaks at this point. So I do have a wet cloth ready, but I don't seem to need it yet. So I flipped the whole thing on its side so that the stairs are flat, and I think this is working. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to do all the stair surfaces. At the same time, I'm also going to very carefully do another black wash on all the symbols. So I'm going to carefully go in there . Because I want this to be more distinct. And again, I'll use my cloth because I don't want any streaks yet. We'll do all the streaking separately. To finish up the symbols, I'm going to take some Tamiya XF59 Desert Yellow paint, which was our main color. I'll use a number 2 flat brush. I'll unload most of the paint, and then I'm just going to go in there and paint the raised surfaces. This will lighten them up and make them stand out better. Now I'm going to paint the ceiling lights so that they look like there's metal underneath all that dirt and concrete. So I'm going to use Tamiya X10 gunmetal. Shake it up. I'm using the Nick Pro number 1 flat brush. And what I'll do, well, we want to make sure, because there's metal flux, we'll make sure that it's really stirred. So I'm using a toothpick. And then we'll take some paint and on a paper towel, I'll take a lot of it off. And then definitely on the edges. So I'm just making some metal lines on the edges. We're not dry brushing. I'm just unloading most of the paint and giving the edges a metal sheen. Now on some of the flatter areas where I didn't put mortar, I'm just going to, again, dab onto the surfaces and give it some metal. And we'll do the same thing for the vents in the back wall. So we'll unload most of the brush. And we'll just go around the edges. The vents are a little bit too shiny for me. So what I'm going to do is take the same black wash and just give them a wash, which will tone it down a bit. And at the same time, see it's starting to drip. That's okay because I want to put some streaks on the wall and I want it to drip down because a vent would probably have particles dripping off of it, so it'll look more realistic. So as long as the drips are thin, we're going to let them stay. Won't clean them up. Now we are going to add some streaks to the walls. To do that, I'll use some Tamiya flat black to start, and we'll also use Tamiya flat brown in a similar way to make brown streaks. So I shake it all up, and I'll use a Nick Pro 1 round brush with a long tip, and I'll bring on some paint. And draw in some streaks. Now, we let them dry a little bit. Not too long because it's flat paint, it dries fast. And then what we do is take some pure thinner and a different brush, and then what we do is we blend them in with the thinner on the edges. So we kind of blend the edges just so it's not so extreme. We're pushing down and a little bit out. And again, we wipe off the top because I don't want any to be over the edge. A second way to make streaks is we use our good old black wash again. And we can just kind of dab it under some overhangs and let it streak down. And then I'll take some of it off, most of it off. Then we'll help these dots at the bottom going straight down. And we can add some more where it's needed. And this is an effect that you can layer on with multiple layers, just like our washes. We can even do the same with our areas where the black streaks were, is just dip a little bit of wash over top of them. And it helps to bring it all together. Here is what the finished paint job looks like. I sprayed everything with a final coat of Rust-Oleum Matte Clear to seal everything up and protect all of our hard work.